The original sin is Joe Biden running for re-election.
This week, Alex Thompson, along with Jake Tapper, wrote Original Sin, documenting President Biden's cognitive decline.
Who's running the country during all this?
New York Times calling it a, quote, biblical story. The LA Times saying it, quote, reads like a Shakespearean drama on steroids. The Washington Post says, quote, it's a damning account of an elderly, egotistical president shielded from reality by a slavish coterie of loyalists and family members.
He wasn't hiding somewhere. I didn't have him, sequestered in some place. I mean, that's ridiculous.
A Biden spokesperson saying aging didn't stop the president from executing presidential decisions. Quote, yes, there were physical changes as he got older, but evidence of aging is not evidence of mental incapacity.
You can see that. I'm mentally incompetent because I can't walk and I can beat the hell out of both of them.
Biden's granddaughter, Naomi, posting to X, quote, this book is political fairy smut for the permanent professional chattering class. A bunch of unoriginal, uninspired lies written by irresponsible, self-promoting journalists out to make a quick buck.
Very few people write books to make money. You write a book because you want to say something, you want to have a legacy.
Good to have you with us today.
Thompson and Tapper have been virtually everywhere.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
We're back with breaking news.
Promoting this book so relentlessly.
Original Sin. Original Sin comes out Tuesday. You will not believe what we found out.
Some have mocked it.
Don't news people have to tell you what they know when they find it out?
There was no effort, none, to get to the bottom of this. And now for you guys to write this book like there was a cover-up.
If it wasn't a cover-up, then why was it so shocking to so many people?
But all this attention making Original Sin the most newsy and buzzworthy political book in years.
Maybe even worse than Watergate in some ways.
Right.
It's the top-selling book in the country, and our focus for the next half hour this week on The Issue Is.
Broadcasting across California, you're watching The Issue Is.
I respect the president. I campaigned for him. I passed his legislation. I admire him. He was probably the only Democrat that could win in 2020. He is probably one of the only ones that will lose in 2024. That's what the data says. His decline is real. And the more he's encapsulated and kept from the public, the more people are going to realize they'd rather side with a strong man who lacks character and competency than a man in decline. And that's the problem right now.
That was then Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips on our show in February 2024. He was largely mocked by his party, ignored by the mainstream media, and finished in the single digits in the Democratic primary.
He often talked about being a transitional president in the context of a campaign.
That was Alex Thompson with us back in 2021. For years, he was one of the few mainstream journalists bringing up a lot of the issues Phillips talked about, and was sometimes shunned by his colleagues because of it. Well, he's written a book about it with Jake Tapper. You may have heard of it. It's called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, its cover-up, and his disastrous choice to run again. This week, Original Sin debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Alex Thompson, welcome back to The Issue Is, and congratulations on #1.
Thank you, sir. And man, that showing that COVID haircut and beard was really cruel, but thank you for highlighting.
Well, it's how far you've come and the journey, and describe how this moment feels. What being #1 means to you.
I don't know. It's a dream come true, right? I mean, every reporter, every writer always dreams of being a New York Times bestseller, especially a New York Times #1 bestseller. Just, I don't know. I feel very grateful for all the people that read, all the sources that talked to me, and also, all the people that highlighted my work, which very much includes you, Alex.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, the book is great, and there's been so much written about it, including by a lot of people who I don't think read it, but seem to want to make it all about the authors or other issues and all the rest of it. But let's talk about what's actually in the book, which is surprising, as you said. But let's start with the title, just so people know what we're talking about. What is the original sin?
Original sin is Joe Biden running for re-election at the age of 80. And what's sort of shocking about this decision is how little process there was. And it was very reckless to do so at his age. And a lot of Democrats we talked to, including people that still love Joe Biden and think very highly of him and his career public service, believe that it was the most significant cause for Donald Trump's ability to come back to the Oval Office.
The other word that a lot of people seem to focus on in terms of the cover is the word cover up.
Yeah, and I think some people associate the word with criminality. And that's not what we're alleging here. But what we are alleging is that the Joe Biden that people saw on that debate stage
with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with.
He had acted that way before that night. It was not just a bad night. It was not just a cold. It was not just about over preparation or under preparation. He had been acting that way. People had seen him act that way. And there was a concerted effort behind the scenes by this White House to try to prevent the public, other members of the Democratic Party, other members of the cabinet, other senior White House officials from seeing that Joe Biden. If it was not being covered up, it would not have been such a shock to so many Democrats, to so many voters. And that's why we call it a cover up.
And so you also name names in terms of who was doing this cover up. And there are a lot of the same folks that were running the country, right? I mean, who, because that's one of the key questions a lot of people have is who's running the country during all this?
You know, one key Democrat is essentially described that Joe Biden was a senior member of the board of 5 people running the country. So these people would be Mike Donilon, Steve Ricchetti, Bruce Reed, at times Ron Klain, and then just sort of outside of them, you know, Jill Biden's longtime chief of staff and sort of his deputy on the president's side, Annie Tomasini. These were the most powerful people in the country the last 4 years.
And these are people that have been longtime advisors to him. And what, to me, the cover up that was most damning and most surprising was the way that they covered up information from getting to him.
Absolutely. They weren't just keeping Joe Biden from the world, they were keeping the world from Joe Biden. And that included his polling numbers, the way that the country was feeling, the tremendous anger that was continuing to bubble up. Joe Biden just did not seem to recognize a lot of that. And, you know, a lot of this is in some ways sort of the dark side of loyalty, that they loved him so much, they were so loyal to him, that in some ways they were protecting him.
And one of the most memorable quotes in the book to me comes from David Plouffe, longtime advisor to Barack Obama and then Kamala Harris. And he says, quote, "One of the great lessons from 2024, never again can we as a party suggest to people that what they're seeing is not true." Which reminded me of so many interviews that both of us have done, including this one with California's U.S. Senator Alex Padilla here on The Issue Is in February of last year.
There's a situation right now where 86% of the country believes that Joe Biden is too old to run for president. 86% of the country doesn't agree on almost anything. Why are they wrong?
Look, maybe it's because they don't see the Joe Biden that I see. Yeah, he's up there in age. That's a number.
We're constantly told how great he was behind the scenes. You know, just see him in the meetings. But your reporting suggests it was actually worse behind the scenes. And what to me was especially concerning was some national security situations where it wasn't just about running for president, it was about being the president.
Yeah, I mean, we had multiple members of the cabinet that said that they had the proverbial 2 a.m. crisis phone call in the middle of the night. They didn't have confidence by 2024 that Joe Biden would be able to handle it. And I think you're so right to highlight that past interview, because one of the stories of this book is basically how the Democratic Party and Democratic elites ignored their own voters who were speaking very loudly and very clearly. And also some of these Democratic elites had seen Joe Biden behind the scenes, had seen moments that truly concerned them, and no one said anything. And, you know, Democrats rightfully mock a lot of Republicans for saying one thing about Donald Trump in private and then going out publicly and, you know, sort of doing a dear leader salute. You know, they did absolutely the exact same thing the last 4 years, especially the last 2 years of Joe Biden's presidency.
And why do you think they did that?
For their own self-interest and preservation. And, you know, they don't get points for bravery for trying to push Joe Biden out after the debate. The reason they did that was because they no longer believed he could win. And so they pushed him aside. But, you know, they didn't want to end up like Dean Phillips did, who I commend you for having on his show. But Dean Phillips is no longer in Congress. None of them wanted to be in that situation, even though I think if you put them all on truth serum, none of them actually believe that Joe Biden should be president in January of 2029, which is what he was running to do.
at 86 years old. So you talk about that debate, and then after the debate, there's a bit of an intervention, and you actually talked about it with us from the RNC. Take a look.
Biden is backed into a corner, but he is isolated, both because he has COVID-19 now, but also from the rest of the party. It is very unclear. While Nancy Pelosi was able to meet with him, Hakeem Jeffries was able to meet with him, Chuck Schumer drove over 3 hours to meet with him in Rehoboth, Delaware to convey these messages.
So in the book, you lay out what happened during that Schumer meeting. This is at Biden's house. He was recovering from COVID. Schumer talks about the fact that Biden's pollsters were not allowed to talk to him. All the information went through Biden's longtime aide, Mike Donnellan. To me, this was the most shocking passage of the whole book. Schumer asks, quote, "Have you talked to your pollsters?" "No," Biden said. Schumer says, "Mr. President, your chances of winning are only 5%. I've talked to your pollsters." "Really?" Biden said. Schumer, "They're not telling you. The analytics guy, who probably knows the best, said it's 1%. Schumer, "If I were you, I wouldn't run. I'm urging you not to run." Biden, "Do you think Kamala could win?" Schumer, "I don't know if she can win. I just know that you cannot." What a moment.
It's extraordinary. And, while a lot of focus was on Nancy Pelosi, Schumer was really the only person that got in Joe Biden's face and said, "I don't think you can do this." And another moment that was clear from that meeting was, Mike Donnellan and Steve Ricchetti had been in another meeting with all the members, Democratic members of the Senate, and it was very clear the overwhelming majority did not think Joe Biden should be the nominee anymore. And Joe Biden didn't appear to know about that either. And so this is a moment where Schumer realizes that Joe Biden is not up to date on all the necessary information that his senior advisors should have been giving him. And it's also a moment where Joe Biden realizes that the members of the Senate, the body he'd been part of for 36 years of his life, no longer think he's up to this.
Did Schumer sit down with you? I mean, how did you get those quotes? How did you get us inside that room?
Well, as you know, most of our quotes are anonymous, but we feel incredibly confident of our reporting.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. And to literally see it laid out like that. And we know you worked with Jake Tapper of CNN on this. How did that partnership come to be?
It was Jake's idea. It actually started the day before the election. He just happened to have me on set that day. And, we were friendly, but we weren't like, let's write a book together friends. And he said, I think she might lose. I've been having this idea for a book about how the Democratic Party let Trump return. Would you be interested? And I sort of, I said non-committally, said, yes, I'm interested. And then the day after the election, he sent me a draft of a book proposal, and we were off to the races. And finally, a lot of Democrats that have been reluctant to talk to us, we talked to over 200 of them, finally started chatting. And some that had talked to us before finally started being more candid.
How do you guys divide the workload? How does that work with two people?
Well, Jake set a very aggressive deadline of the first draft being due January 31st. So we basically, a deadline sort of sharpens the focus. And we basically made a list of, 100, 200 people, and we just divided them up.
Up next, how did so many people in the media get the Biden story so wrong? We'll break it down. More with Alex Thompson when we come back.
Being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
That is Axios' Alex Thompson speaking to the White House Correspondents Association when they honored him for his reporting on President Biden's decline. That reporting found in the original new book, Original Sin. Alex, what is your biggest lesson for the media in terms of what was missed and what can be done now?
I think it's just a good reminder that every single president, every single White House, no matter the party, they all lie. And you just have to remain skeptical, even with people that claim to have, selfless and earnest motives. I also think sometimes when you're in a reporting circle, sometimes, a groupthink can sort of take hold and a clubbiness can take hold, and you don't feel comfortable necessarily isolating yourself from your peers, even if sources are telling you something and your eyes are telling you something.
Do you think by nature there's a lot of reporters that are more progressive and don't like Donald Trump and were concerned about potentially helping him or feeding into what they see as right-wing propaganda, and so they were afraid to bring up these issues for that reason?
I think some of them, yeah. And I'm not the only one that feels that way. Former editor-in-chief of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, said that as much last year after the debate. I do think that some reporters let their own personal ideological leanings influence their reporting.
Why do you think you were able to not do that as much, to go up against it? What was your thought process?
I guess I've always just been very comfortable, sort of, if I believe something, then just sort of standing on that and being on my own.
One of the things that you guys argue for in the book is this need for there to potentially be changes in the way that White House doctors report to the public. Because even though this is called a cover-up, legally, it wasn't, right? I mean, everything they did was fine. The White House doctor doesn't have to tell anything about the president's health.
Yeah, there's no mechanism to make a president be candid about what medications they're on, what diseases they've been screened for, nothing. I mean, everything's based on the trust system. And part of the reason we were interested in this book is because Joe Biden, this is a consequential instance of not being candid about your health, but it is by no means the first. George Washington was not candid about his health. Woodrow Wilson, FDR, JFK, Ronald Reagan. This has happened before. It will happen again unless there is some sort of mechanism to force transparency. So one of the ideas that we quote an expert having is basically requiring the White House physician to submit a report to Congress under penalty of perjury. Just one idea, but if this has happened before, it will happen again.
When we come back, who are the biggest winners and losers of Original Sin? We are talking to Alex Thompson, co-author of the #1 book in America, Original Sin. Who do you think's the biggest winner of this book? There's a lot of losers, but I think the biggest winner may be Bob Hur, who was the independent prosecutor who was really disparaged by all of the Democrats for stuff that he didn't actually do.
I completely agree with you. The White House essentially went to war with him to try to disparage him. And ironically, he's actually representing Harvard University now against the Trump administration. But this was a classic example of a guy that looked at what he saw. And I think if you listen to the tapes of the conversation, which my Axios colleague Mark Caputo released just a few weeks ago, it is sort of shocking that the man on those tapes was president of the United States.
In 2015 he died. Maybe 2015. I think it was 2015.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think that was That's right, Mr. President.
Biden said at the time that Hur brought up this idea of Beau Biden, and he actually didn't. Joe Biden brought that up in this random sort of long-winded thing, and Hur chose not at the time to fight back, but now we're learning his side of the story. Alex, we spoke to you years ago when you were reporting a book on the Bidens that Simon & Schuster chose not to publish. How did getting to know the Bidens that way, kind of intimately, compare to what you learned doing this book?
Certainly a lot of the themes of that original book, which I sort of saw as a family tragedy grafted onto a presidency, the death of Beau Biden, Hunter's travails, I thought were just such a key part of how Biden acted and saw the world. And so, reporting on the Bidens in that intimate way certainly influenced some of the themes of this book in the aftermath of the election.
She told me the same thing. We've talked about on the show before that we had the same high school teacher who doubted our writing skills at Agora High School. The book publisher doubted you. Fellow reporters doubted you, your reports on Biden's age. After all of that, how do you process this moment of having the best-selling book in the country? And is there a little bit of I told you so?
Victory is the best revenge. I don't have to say I told you so.
Are people apologizing to you now? And what has been some of the reaction to the book, or surprising reaction to the book?
I'd say there are some people that are saying I was rooting for you all along. But in fairness, the people that I really respected, the people that I really cared what their opinion was, whether or not it was family, but also some colleagues who I really, really trust. And also like my bosses at Axios, they had my back the entire way. The people that I always really cared what their opinion was, they were with me the entire way. And they've been so great. And I feel sort of in some ways it's the joint victory.
We wrap things up next with Alex Thompson playing personal issues. Stay with us. You're watching The Issue Is. You know that we like to have fun on this show. You've even shown us your dance moves in the past.
Such as they are.
We'll add that in. Great. You told us that the Red Hot Chili Peppers were your favorite band in our personal issues segment. Are you ready to play another round of personal issues?
Hit me.
Okay, these are some of your recent favorites. So we're going to put 30 seconds up on the clock. What is the best TV show that you've binged lately?
The Studio with Seth Rogen.
Best book you've read other than your own?
Martyr.
Favorite movie you've seen?
Mission Impossible.
All-time favorite sports team?
Lakers.
Favorite interview on the press tour other than this one?
I enjoyed the free press with Barry Weiss.
And for you, Alex, as we wrap things up, sort of your biggest takeaway from this whole experience, this crazy whirlwind you've been on, doing 1,000 different interviews, traveling the country, sort of what's going through your mind right now?
Life is good. I feel lucky.
That's very concise. I appreciate that. Alex Thompson, congratulations. Those of us from Agora Hills are especially proud of you. Congratulations, Alex, again. Thanks so much for being here for The Issue Is.
Thank you. I'm really grateful. You've been the best. And you are, when I said it was a joint victory, you're very much part of that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week.